What if, at this very moment, you found yourself as the ruler of a Viking village under attack? Imagine the sound of war horns echoing through the icy fjords, the smell of smoke already drifting from burning huts, and the terrified eyes of your people turning to you for salvation. Before we dive into this chilling alternate reality, take just a few seconds to like this video. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel only if you are truly ready to lead your people into the storm. Now, let us step into the shadows of history. As the newly chosen Jarl, the leader of the village, you stand on a wooden platform, your fur cloak heavy on your shoulders. The night is cold, yet your heart pounds hotter than the forge where blacksmiths shape iron. Out beyond the palisade walls, enemy ships with dragon-headed prows slice through the dark waters. Their torches flicker like hungry eyes in the night. Your villagers are panicked. Children cry, elders pray to the gods, warriors sharpen axes with trembling hands. Some look at you with hope, others with doubt. You realize quickly that the fate of every soul in this village hangs on your next words, your next decision. The question is not only how you will fight, but what kind of leader you will be. Will you become a protector who shields the weak, or a conqueror who leads with iron and fire? History tells us that Viking raids were brutal, often targeting settlements for wealth, slaves, and power. But science also shows us how survival often hinged not only on strength but also on cleverness, where to build defenses, how to ration food, and when to call upon allies. And then, of course, there is the mystery, the whispers of Odin, the ravens said to spy across the land, and the fear that perhaps fate is already woven by the Norns, unchangeable no matter what you decide. So the question for you is simple but terrifying. If tonight the flames rise and the enemy breaks through your gates, what would you do to survive until dawn? Before you can decide how to protect your people, you need to understand the world you have inherited. A Viking village was not just a cluster of wooden huts. It was the beating heart of Norse survival. Picture longhouses built from timber and turf, smoke curling from fire pits, livestock huddled in pens, and ships tied along the shoreline. Every plank, every tool, every grain of barley mattered. To lose the village was not just to lose homes, it was to lose the very soul of your people. Now, the enemy is not some vague shadow. Historically, Viking settlements often faced raids not only from rival Viking clans but also from Saxons, Slavs, or even ambitious chieftains who smelled weakness. Warfare was a brutal affair, and your village sits in the crossfire of ambition and survival. The question is, do you understand the art of war well enough to stand against them? Viking warriors were not just barbarians running with axes. They mastered shipbuilding that modern engineers still marvel at. Their longships could glide through deep seas and shallow rivers alike, striking fast and retreating just as quickly. Their weapons, from bearded axes to round shields, were designed with precision. Even the iconic horned helmets you imagine. Well, sorry to break the illusion, but history says those were more opera than battlefield. Real Viking helmets were iron domes meant to deflect blades, not fashion statements. But war was not only physical, it was psychological. Imagine the enemy screaming Odin owns you all, as they charged, their painted faces glowing in torchlight. Science today shows us how fear can paralyze groups, but also how adrenaline can turn ordinary farmers into ferocious defenders. The mind was as much a battlefield as the muddy ground under your boots. And then comes the mystery. The Norse believed the gods were watching every clash. If you fell bravely, Valkyries might carry you to Valhalla, the great hall of Odin. But what if you did not want glory and death? What if you wanted life? If you, as Jarl, remind your people of their ancestors' courage, will they fight with more fury? Or will fear of Ragnarok, the prophesied end of the world, make them falter? Here is your dilemma. Knowledge of Viking tactics and belief in Norse myths might become the strongest weapons in your arsenal. But you must decide, do you lean on fear, or do you inspire hope? Now the horns are louder, and the enemy ships grind against the shore. You can almost feel the weight of every heartbeat in the village pressing against your chest. Being Jarl is not about glory, it is about responsibility, and tonight that responsibility is crushing. Your warriors gather in the hall, shields in hand, waiting for your command. Some are seasoned fighters, their beards streaked with gray, scars etched like maps of survival. Others are barely men, boys with fire in their eyes but fear in their bones. And outside, mothers clutch children while elders mutter prayers to Odin, Thor, and Freya. Their faith is strong, but faith alone cannot swing an axe. As leader, you realize there are no easy decisions. Do you station every warrior on the wall, knowing the enemy might burn the village from the inside? Do you hold reserves? Risking that your lines may break, do you send scouts in the dead of night? Or is it already too late for reconnaissance? These are not abstract questions, they are the difference between life and death. History shows us that Viking society placed enormous pressure on its leaders. A jarl who failed could be cast down or even sacrificed. Science adds another layer. Studies of leadership under extreme stress reveal how quickly humans can break under fear, but also how charisma can bind a group tighter than iron. If you speak with trembling doubt, your warriors might crumble. If you speak with calm confidence, even if you feel terror inside, they may fight like wolves beside you. But let us add some humor to your terrifying night. Imagine you climb onto the table, bang your drinking horn, and declare, "All right, everyone, do not panic." But the enemy army is only slightly bigger than ours, and by slightly, I mean 3 times bigger. So, who is ready for some cardio? The hall might erupt in nervous laughter, and in that moment you have done something critical. You have broken fear with humor, a weapon as sharp as any blade. Now you face the mirror of leadership. Do you inspire with hope, terrify with fear, or simply distract with humor? Remember, every second counts, and your people look only to you. The enemy fires burn brighter now. Their chants roll like thunder across the water, and your people wait for your decision. This is the moment that defines you. Do you stand firm behind the wooden palisades and prepare to repel the assault, or do you rally your warriors to charge out and meet the enemy head-on? Let us weigh the choices. Staying within the walls offers protection. The barricades, though crude, can slow enemy forces, and from behind them your archers may rain arrows into the night. Historically, some Viking villages fortified themselves with earth walls or wooden stakes, knowing that even seconds of delay could turn the tide. Science tells us that in sieges, defenders often have the advantage of terrain and morale. After all, you are fighting for your home. But there is a risk. Walls can burn, gates can splinter, and if the enemy pours inside, panic spreads like wildfire. On the other hand, leading a counterattack can seize initiative. Viking warbands thrived on surprise and ferocity, striking before the enemy fully organized. Charging out could shatter their morale, especially if you scream like a madman swinging your axe. Picture this: you rush forward, bellowing, and your warriors echo your cry. Suddenly you look less like farmers and more like berserkers chosen by Odin himself. Yet history also shows us how risky this is. Once outside the safety of the village, your people face open ground, exposed to arrows, and if the enemy outnumbers you 3-1. Well, let us just say cardio won't save you this time. Here's the twist: both strategies carry weight in Viking lore. Defenders who fought to the last man were honored, and those who led daring counterstrikes could be sung about for generations. But the question for you is immediate and personal. Do you protect your walls or gamble everything on fury? And of course, let us add a little humor. Imagine trying to give a rousing speech, but your shield keeps slipping off your arm and hitting you in the face. Not exactly the heroic image. But hey, if your warriors laugh, maybe they will fight harder just to keep you alive long enough to embarrass yourself again. So, Jarl, the decision is yours. Do you hold the line, or do you charge? As the torches flicker and steel clatters in the dark, you sense that this fight is no longer just about men. The air is thick with fear, but also with whispers of the divine. For the Norse, every battle was more than survival. It was a stage where gods and fate revealed themselves. Tonight, those same myths weigh on your shoulders. Your warriors look skyward, muttering to Odin for wisdom, to Thor for thunderous strength, and to Freya for protection of their families. They believe Valkyries hover above, ready to swoop down and carry the bravest souls to Valhalla. Imagine the effect. Some warriors fight harder, eager to die gloriously, while others tremble, fearing their deaths may be meaningless if the gods turn away. History records this blend of faith and war vividly. Viking sagas speak of berserkers who entered trance like rages, thought to be touched by Odin's power. Modern science suggests mushrooms or adrenaline might explain it, but when you see a man foaming at the mouth, eyes blazing, charging without fear, do you really care about chemistry, or do you believe, for just a moment, that gods walk among you? And here's where you, as Jarl, must decide. Do you invoke the gods to inspire courage, or do you ground your people in logic and strategy? If you tell them Odin himself favors your village, their blood may boil with fire. But what if the gods do not answer? What if the next arrow fells your best warrior? Faith is powerful, but it can crumble just as quickly. Perhaps you mix both worlds. You might raise your axe to the night sky and shout, Odin, if you are busy, fine, but we could really use a miracle right now. Half your warriors laugh, half cry, but all grip their weapons tighter. In that moment, humor, faith, and leadership blend into one. The battlefield is more than swords and shields, it is belief, myth, and the unseen forces your people swear by. The question is, will you fight as a mortal, or as a leader who dares to summon the gods? The enemy finally crashes upon your village like a storm breaking against a cliff. Arrows streak through the night sky, some embedding into shields, others finding unlucky flesh. The wooden palisade shudders as torches ignite its surface, sending sparks and smoke into the freezing air. The battle has begun. You hear the clash of steel, the guttural shouts of warriors, the cries of the wounded. Fire paints the night in red and gold, illuminating faces twisted with rage, fear, and grim determination. This is not a saga written on parchment. This is survival, raw and immediate. Your warriors fight like wolves. Some enter berserk fury, their howls cutting through the chaos. Others stand shoulder to shoulder, shields locked, bracing against the impact of enemy charges. Science today would tell you adrenaline surges through their veins, dulling pain, sharpening reflexes. But here and now, it feels like something more, like the gods themselves have poured fire into their blood. And then the chaos closes in. Houses catch flame, livestock scatter, and the screams of villagers pierce your heart. You realize leadership is not only about swinging an axe. It is about making impossible choices. Do you pull warriors away from the front line to save families trapped in fire, risking your defenses, or do you keep your men on the walls, knowing innocence may perish while you hold the line? Humor might feel impossible here, but even in darkness, it can be a shield. Imagine one of your warriors yelling mid-battle, Jarl, my helmet's too tight, if I pass out. Tell my wife it was not the arrows, it was the blacksmith's fault. A laugh erupts, cutting through fear for a heartbeat, reminding your people they are still human. And sometimes, one heartbeat of hope is enough to keep the shield wall standing. The night stretches endlessly, filled with blood and smoke. Every decision you make, every order you shout, changes the fate of your village. And the question gnaws at you, will dawn bring survival or only ashes? The night finally begins to fade, though it feels as if centuries have passed since the first war horn sounded. Smoke hangs low over the village. The ground is littered with broken shields, shattered spears, and the still forms of the fallen. You breathe in the heavy stench of ash and blood, wondering whether this is victory or simply survival dressed in different clothes. Your warriors, what remains of them, stagger beside you. Some grin through cracked teeth, proud to still be breathing. Others weep silently over friends lost. And your villagers, those who survived, emerge from cellars and hiding places, eyes wide with disbelief that they are still alive. But victory has its price. Homes are gone, livestock lost, fields scorched. Even if the enemy has been driven off, your people now face hunger, rebuilding, and grief. History tells us this was the cycle of Viking life. Villages often endured raids, rebuilt, and endured again. But science reminds us of the human cost, trauma that scars deeper than wounds. Modern psychology would tell you that survivors carry invisible battles inside them, sometimes heavier than the ones fought with axes and shields. As Jarl, you now face not only the question of war, but the harder question of healing. Do you declare this day a triumph, raising fallen weapons to the sky and chanting of Odin's favor? Do you mourn, honoring the dead in silence, their names carved into memory? Or do you simply collapse on the nearest log and mutter, well, at least I did not trip over my own shield this time. Humor may be small, but it can be medicine too. And so the dawn rises, painting the fjord in pale light. The storm has passed, but its shadow remains. The question lingers over your shoulders, heavier than your axe. Can you bear the weight of rebuilding, knowing every decision you make will echo into the future of your people? The fires die down, the shouts fade, and silence falls over your Viking village. You, the Jarl, have stood through the storm of war and made decisions that shaped the fate of every man, woman, and child. Perhaps your walls held, perhaps your warriors charged, perhaps you even called upon the gods themselves. But no matter how the story unfolded, one truth remains: you carried the burden of leadership when it mattered most. History tells us the Vikings were not only raiders but survivors, builders, explorers. They endured because they adapted. And tonight, in this thought experiment, you became part of that legacy. You saw how survival demanded not just strength of arms, but strength of spirit, cleverness of mind, and yes, even humor in the darkest of nights. Now the question returns to you. If you truly were the ruler of a Viking village under attack, what would you have done? Would you stand and defend, risk everything in a furious charge, or trust in faith and fate? There is no single right answer because leadership is never easy, and that is exactly why it matters. Thank you for staying with me through this journey into history, myth, and imagination. If you enjoyed this scenario, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend who would totally panic if handed an axe. But more importantly, I want to hear from you. What choice would you have made as Jarl, and what other historical what-if would you like me to explore next time? The village is safe. For now, the saga continues with you.